Endometriosis is a whole body condition. It's not a bad period. It's not even just an estrogen problem. It is a whole body condition with immune dysregulation really at the core of it. The endo was so bad for me. I had 5 surgeries. The doctor gave me anxiety pills. It really hurts thinking that I was just never going to get better. At one point then I told my husband, like, I never want to say the word endometriosis again.
You went from stage 4 endo to 20 years of pain-free. What are some of the tools that you found to be most helpful on your journey?
A guiding light in women's health, Khush Sra
is a former engineer turned functional nutritionist who's walked the exhausting road of endometriosis herself.
Through pain, surgeries, fertility struggles, and now perimenopause.
Today, she leads a 75,000-strong community of women reclaiming their energy, confidence, and freedom from endo.
With the whole body compassionate support she once needed herself.
80% of women with endometriosis are shown to have like dysbiosis or like a gut disruption, but we also see a lot of distended bellies. And I think endobelly is probably one of the most complex, but if you get down to the simple way to approach it, here's what I would do.
What is your approach to anti-inflammatory eating for endo?
My approach to anti-inflammatory eating actually doesn't start with food. We actually start with
Welcome to the Dr. Brighten Show, where we burn the BS in women's health to the ground. I'm your host, Dr. Jolene Brighten, and if you've ever been dismissed, told your symptoms are normal or just in your head, or been told just to deal with it, this show is for you. And if while listening to this, you decide you like this kind of content, I invite you to head over to drbrighten.com, where you'll find free guides, twice weekly podcast releases, and a ton of resources to support you on your journey. Let's dive in. You went from stage 4 endo to 20 years of pain-free. What are some of the tools that you found to be most helpful on your journey?
nutrition, obviously, as like number one. I was a very picky eater. And I knew at some point it hit me that perhaps I should change my food. And it took me a lot of trial and error, a lot of fad diets, even the Special K diet. That's how old, this goes back. But I would say the food piece was definitely at the core of my healing journey.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part, probably if I had to just label two, would be like stress and lifestyle. Like literally slowing myself down.
So we're going to talk about food today. We're going to talk about endobelly. We're going to talk about, gut infections, and we're going to really cover the gamut of endometriosis and nutrition and gut health and what women should know. But before we get into food, you said something really interesting about stress. What do you think it is that women are not recognizing about their stress that's having such a major impact on their endometriosis and their period pain?
Yeah, I think it was similar to what I didn't recognize. I was like, I can handle stress. I'm a go-getter. I can handle a lot. I'm a very productive person. I had a lot on my plate all the times, and I felt very chill. I didn't feel like I was stressed out. Someone asked me if I was stressed out. I wasn't stressed out. But if I listened to my body, I'd be like, oh, what is that? And the connecting to my body, actually like doing like some kind of like mind-body connection activity, it almost felt uncomfortable.
Mm.
And then there was like this time where I started this meditation practice. It was like in a closet next to a pile of laundry. I was like, okay, they're saying meditation works. I'm just going to sit here and just try to meditate. And I never knew what was actually happening, if it was even working, until a couple weeks in, I was like, gosh, like I'm slower, but I can still do everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that there was this pace that my nervous system or my nerves were just kind of hypervigilant. And if I trace it back, it was probably since I was a kid that I had this hypervigilance. My parents would always call me as someone who's strong. She's our strong one. She's like, like I'm always able to do things, a very responsible individual. But I could tell that took a weight, like my body carried.
Mm-hmm.
And that stress and we know with science too, the upregulation of the HPA axis is correlated with endometriosis too. So definitely it was for me just like an internal signal that was just on always.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. So my pelvic floor physical therapist, to which I did an episode with Deanna Mendez, I will go ahead and link to that. She has me doing body scan exercises. So that's a lot of what you're talking about, checking in with your body. And something she brought up, she also has endometriosis. She treats a lot of endometriosis, is that women with endometriosis are usually so disconnected from their pain that they're actually in tremendous pain all the time, not just in their pelvis, because we know endo can live anywhere, but also it's inflammatory. So it can be affecting our body in many ways. And yet so many of us, we get told things from doctors like, you need to meditate, you need to check in with your body. But I think a big reason why we don't is because we wouldn't be able to get through our days if we actually recognized how much of a struggle it was to live in our body.
Yeah, absolutely. It is if we actually tuned in, it's a discomfort to tune in. And we're already feeling like we're in discomfort. We're already in a cycle of pain. And then to tune in and feel more discomfort, it's our natural response to be like, nah, let me just go work out instead. Like how many we have that work with us too. It's like they want to run and they're like want to exercise and it feels so good for the mental health. And that's what I did. I started when in my health journey for my stress or for my lifestyle pieces, I started going to the gym. I signed up for the gym, my only one membership I ever got. And I started running on this treadmill. And lo and behold, I was gaining weight. I was in pain. I already had an accessibility parking pass and my legs were even, more tired and flared up. And I'd come home and I'd be like, I feel like crap, but I guess I should keep going because everybody tells me you should exercise to get healthy. And so, like the disconnection, we draw away from that and we want to do more physical exertion, right? I mean, I still see it in myself today. It's like my counters are messy and I'm like, oh, I got to go. I got to clean all my counters. Like I just need to do something where it feels like there's a distraction available.
Well, I want to talk about food now because I think this is something that has tremendous power for women. And yet, doctors don't usually talk to them about it or they'll dismiss them. And especially when women say, like, I changed my diet, these things help me. And the doctor's like, it's probably placebo, which is so dismissive, especially considering there is so much research out there about nutrition and the impact on our body. We need a lot more in endometriosis, as we know. But I want to talk about what foods help reduce endometriosis pain and inflammation, the things you work with your clients.
Yeah, there's a perspective that I have on nutrition, and I do believe there's lots of foods that are anti-inflammatory. And I also believe that anti-inflammatory is almost a state of our bodies as well. And that way, certain individuals, I might give them like the list of foods that I'll share, but then others listening to this may say, you know what, I've tried those foods and they weren't good for me. And that is absolutely true. And I don't want to dismiss that either. Just because some foods that are anti-inflammatory didn't sit well with you doesn't mean that they don't necessarily work. It's just that your body, your gut, your state needed some other foods to start. But yeah, absolutely. We love to ensure that women are getting the right level of polyphenols and fibers like broccoli, cauliflower, cruciferous vegetables. We love beets, for methylation support, broccoli sprouts as well. We love, a cup of ginger and turmeric tea for the anti-inflammatory aspects of it. I also like sea vegetables. For minerals, especially for those, where there has been mineral depletion, over the years, whether it's NSAID use or the pill or stuff like that. And, those are some of the top foods that we would say like a lot of our clients are, just in learning to add in. And we start small in something that is doable and start to see how your body responds with these things.
You said sea vegetables. People are going to immediately want to know what that is.
Yeah. So things like, nori, kelp, kombu, and what we do is like you can go to a store or even on Amazon now and get dried flakes and sprinkle them on your food. So it's not like the full like if you look at a miso soup and there's like these sea vegetables and the texture doesn't sit well, but you can get like dulce flakes, and so they're just rich in different minerals that sometimes now our soil is depleted of.
Can you walk us through an anti-inflammatory style of eating? Just generally, we're thinking about in endometriosis, and with the caveat that not everything is going to be true for you. And you have to really sit through the lens of like, where's my body at and what works for me? But I would love if you could just take our listeners through what is your approach to anti-inflammatory eating for endo?
My approach to anti-inflammatory eating actually doesn't start with food. We actually start with what we call enabling healing. enabling healing is just making sure that our body gets into that parasympathetic state as much as possible, and especially before we eat. So being able to switch off the stress signals, and be with your food, smell your food, slow it down for a minute and chew the food, get those salivary enzymes going, get that gastric juices flowing. Like nutrition requires our digestive system to be online. And often in this busy life and stress and all the, even just the medical trauma we've been through, those things kind of, go down-regulate a bit. So I would say first and foremost is supporting your digestive state by being with your food, getting mindful, chewing, and really getting to a place where, you know what, you look at your food and be like, okay, I may not have to do a 360 here, and take the stress away, because it's a lot of stress when you're trying all these diets, you're getting restrictive, you have cravings, and you feel like you're not good enough at changing your diet, or, because I feel like everybody knows that they could potentially eat better. But there's a lot of weight of how do you actually do it? Where do you actually start? So I would say first and foremost, take the stress out, slow things down, get mindful, chew your food better, sit down while you're eating, don't eat on the go and stuff like that. And then in terms of actual foods, we start with, let's say a nourishing breakfast. I'm not a fan of skipping breakfast. And that's another thing. I don't like skipping meals. I don't like undereating. Start with simple breakfasts. We like chia puddings with coconut milks. We love eggs. We love sauerkraut. We also love leftovers for breakfast as well. So anything you've cooked overnight, let's say it's chicken or sweet potatoes, and having that for breakfast, having something really nourishing, making sure there's some good protein and fat in there as well to start your day. Because if you start your day with that rich, nutrition and the rich macronutrients, you're less likely to have cravings and energy drops during the day. And then having, a solid lunch with, some colorful veggies and additional protein and fat. I really want all macronutrients at all meals. And if you pick your favorite vegetables and stick with them. There's this whole thing of eat 30 different vegetables, 30 different colors throughout the week. I'm a big person of take the pressure off again. Get your favorite vegetables, whether it's broccoli, whether it's asparagus, whether it's, arugula, take your favorite protein and fat and throw it on some arugula. Have some berries, if you want some more color and more variety. I love raw carrots. I like them unpeeled, just for that prebiotic fiber in there. As a snack as well, you could just take raw carrots and chew on them. They're one of my favorite snacks. I'm like celery, carrots, blueberries, no thinking snacks, just, chew on them. And, again, for dinner, I usually avoid grains at dinner. If any, it's a lot of carbohydrates, and each person has to know their carb tolerance. So some individuals can do with some grains, and other individuals, their carb tolerance is just not there yet, where they don't do well with grains. And that's something for you to explore individually as well. But at dinner time, we often don't do grains, and have some solid protein, get some non-starchy vegetables in. And again, I'm not going to avoid more healthy fats in.
I think it's so important that you started with the aspect of actually getting into a digestive state. So you said parasympathetic activity, that's your digestive state of being of your nervous system. It's something, before we started recording, we were talking about my book, Beyond the Pill.
Yeah.
And I wrote in there, you are not what you eat, you are what you absorb. And the reality is that if you're not chewing well, if you don't take the time to smell your food, to be present with your food, then your digestive system is not set up to actually absorb that food. Then we've got other issues like gut infections can be going on. There's a significant crossover we see with endometriosis, autoimmune disease, neurodivergent conditions. And we know that all of those, any single one of them, can have gut inflammation taking place. So I want to talk to you about the link between endometriosis and gut issues like SIBO or IBS.
Yeah, there's a huge connection. How could there not be? We are literally just living microbes and bacteria, right? I always tell my, our communities that 38 trillion or something like that's the number of microbes in our gut. And if you think about stars and the galaxy, it's maybe I don't know, 10 billion or so, something like that. It's not even close. And just think about all of those. They're the co-pilots in our health.
Yeah.
And, that immune system lies in our gut. Our nervous system is entangled in our gut, and they're in charge. I'm like, we have to feed them because they're in charge. They're the co-pilots. And if I look at this, I'm an engineer, right? Originally in training. So I'm an engineer turned nutritionist because of just my experience with endometriosis. But I look at like the router and then I look at the Wi-Fi signal. So I look at the router as like all of our bacteria in our gut, and those signals are like the communicators are our hormones. And so, yes, the immune system is that router. It is in charge, and there's definitely dysfunction. We know that from studies there are imbalances of natural killer cells, interleukin-6, and other like immune modulators within our gut. And so, by supporting the gut and its lining and its ability to digest, produce bacteria, ferment, and just even digest and eliminate hormones, right? It has a key role in estrogen metabolism and estrogen balancing as well. So yes, the gut is related so closely to that immune system, to the endocrine system as well. And we look at food as just one of the tools to support that immune system, because the system that we teach a lot of our clients is that psychoneuroimmune endocrine pathway. I'm not going to get into the science, but it's just saying that our body is a whole body, and endometriosis is a whole body condition. And now the science is, even earlier this year, there was a study that came out about the connection of autoimmune and how women with endometriosis are twice as likely to get a diagnosis with an autoimmune condition. And so the science is coming. It's already been there, but I feel like more and more ties are coming and saying endometriosis is not a pure bad period. It's not even just an estrogen problem. It is a whole body condition with immune dysregulation really at the core of it.
I feel like this is something that us in the endo community. So I got diagnosed with endometriosis just a few years ago in my 40s, and I feel like I was yelling about this stuff, and now I'm in the community, and I'm like yelling about it even harder. There are these connections that if you just listen to women. You have all the evidence you really need. And yet we're waiting on these studies to validate it. Now we need the studies.
Yes.
I want the studies. I love the studies.
Yeah.
When that study came out and it was like, oh, lo and behold, like there's a connection, and women have, with endometriosis, they're more likely to have autoimmune disease. And doctors are like, oh my God, who would have thunk it? And I'm like, me with Hashimoto's and psoriasis and endometriosis.
Yeah.
Also, I have yet to see an endometriosis patient. So I run things called a test called a Cyrex Array 5, which is an early autoimmune detection panel. And I've yet to see an endometriosis patient that didn't have the beginning autoantibodies or frank autoimmune disease. And I think that I want women to understand why this is important. Is I have said this for years. Medicine needs to stop waiting for a study to believe the patient that's in front of them. But that's the reality what women with endometriosis are up against, is that doctors will not believe us until a study was done 17 years prior and someone finally presents it at a conference to them. And I find that absolutely ridiculous.
It is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I see it every day in our practice as well, is women who have lost their voice. They've lost agency, and who's to blame them? Like that was me, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, where I was like, obviously my body's not working. Something's off. I don't know what to do about it. I'm here. Please help me. Right. And I went through colonoscopies, stress tests and infectious diseases. Like the things that I got tested for was just insane, because they were like, there's something else up here. And I was like, okay. And I felt like I really needed someone else externally to validate what was going on, label me, even give me 10 labels, because this doesn't make sense to me. And nowadays women are feeling the same way. It's like, I don't know what to do. I feel broken. And if you're telling me I need this, okay. But we'll have patients who say, yeah, I went in and I said I didn't want the pill, but the doctor said they won't operate on me if I don't take the pill after. And I was like, this is where we're at. Where our bodies are not working with us. So we are looking externally for support, rightfully so. And then outwardly, we're not getting, any validation. We're getting even more dismissal.
Yeah.
But how are we going to progress if we don't listen to women and we don't listen to their lived experience of it?
I feel like I need to get a red flag for the Dr. Brighten show that I could just like throw at the camera. So if a doctor tells you, I will not operate on you, I will not do an endometriosis excision surgery unless you take the pill afterwards, red flag, probably not an endo expert, and most definitely not someone I would let in my pelvis, because, we had another podcast guest on who is an endometriosis surgeon, Melissa McHale. And she said, no surgery is better than a bad surgery when it comes to endometriosis. And the reality is a lot of women with endo are facing bad surgeries, or they're not getting holistic care around their surgeries. And that's something that was why I picked my surgical team,
Yeah.
is that they even worked with the hospital on the nutrition of what you would eat when you came out of surgery, anti-inflammatory diet, rich with fibers, feed the prebiotics, feed the fiber, the fiber for removing estrogen, like making sure we get motility going. Like they were already thinking about all of that. And when I see so often, and I just don't think endometriosis surgery is as regulated as it should be. I know some gynecologist is going to come for me, bring it, because my endo's going to flare, I'll get pissed. No, actually, I've had excision surgery. I'm much better now. But so often I'll get, gynecologists who are like, all of us can do this surgery. Well, you can, but should you?
Yeah.
Should you? Like, there are things that I can do that are in my scope. I can prescribe methadone, but should I?
Yeah.
No, it's not my expertise. It's not where I hang out in medicine.
Absolutely. And I think that's, it's a multifactorial disease. You need a team of practitioners. You need to find the right surgeon that works for you, even amongst the experts who do see it integratively. You may jive with one versus the other. You need to understand, like, physically what kind of support you need from a physical, PT or osteopathy, or chiropractic, nutrition wise, and also just like, mental, emotional as well. I think that's a big piece of it too, going through this journey and not knowing what the other side holds, whether it's, a pill you're trying, whether it's a diet you're trying. Like, these women aren't starting, from ground zero. They've been in this journey, usually pushing through, usually alone, isolated, pushing through symptoms, normalizing it. There's so much normalization that we learn to do ourselves because it's just the culture now. It's like, I'm not, how many times I say, I'm not as bad as those that I've heard.
Yeah.
Or I'm so sorry. They'll even come to me and say, I'm so sorry you had it really bad. I don't have it that bad. And I was like, I'm good now. Like, I don't need, like, I'm really good. But your pain and your experience is just as valid. Yet we're still trying to, like, compromise ourselves within our own selves because it's just the norm. The doctor's like, yeah, this is normal. If the Tylenol doesn't work for you, maybe there's naproxen. I mean, I damaged my gut taking naproxen for years, and then they just handed me narcotics and like, here you go. It's a simple way, but those were all Band-Aids because, like you said, the studies that are coming out now, maybe they'll be in practice in 20 years when my daughter, is an adult practicing or something like that.
Yeah. I feel like, for any practitioner listening right now, if you want to learn about endometriosis, listen to endometriosis patients because they know so much about their condition and their body. And it's the same with like infertility. In these conditions where women don't get a lot of support, women become extreme experts about their body and about their knowledge is just astounding. And so it's something that, I'd have colleagues being like, oh, how did you learn so much about this topic? Or I've never heard this before. And I'm like, I listen to patients. If you listen to your patients, hear their stories, believe their stories, start documenting and putting the patterns together, you start to see that, like, lo and behold, it's not that different, the experience. So with small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, that we brought up before, and IBS, these are common conditions that ride along with endometriosis. I know when you said broccoli earlier, if you've got SIBO or you've got IBS, you're just like, no, I can't eat broccoli.
Yeah.
So how do you modify things if somebody is dealing with gut dysfunction, yet we still need to move out estrogen, we still need to be getting our polyphenols, our antioxidants, our minerals?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where I say it's like anti-inflammatory can be a diet, but it's also a state of our body. And when there is SIBO, when there is even high histamine issues, a lot of the, nutrition plans out there, they're like, I know that this is going to bother me. And they just avoid it. So definitely there are individual approaches to nutrition. I'm all about personalized support and making sure based on your gut, based on your conditions existing, but also on your lifestyle. Sometimes, you have someone with SIBO, but then you also have them, she's a mom cooking for two with and just can't cook these many, different meals.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do I make this work? And that's where really it's about meeting you where you're at, whether you have SIBO, whether you have high histamine, whether you have severe IBS or Crohn's, or Hashimoto's, or lupus, making sure that we look at you and understand what are you tolerating today and what are some of the initial changes you can make. So, you might start out with some flaxseed initially rather than that. You might start with some supplements. You might get in sulforaphane, you might get in some calcium glucarate. So there's other ways like resveratrol. There's other supplements that you can start small with and shift the body into a better state of metabolizing estrogen and gut motility. I would say for SIBO, we really want to get gut motility stabilized because otherwise sometimes we see it's either too loose or too slow. We've gone as far as going into an elemental diet for individuals to reset it. People have gone, done the antibiotics over and over again, and it hasn't worked. So we can use botanicals, but we can also use an elemental diet now. So it really is individual on what's available to you, where are you at with your lifestyle, and how exhausted are you? Because sometimes it's like you're so exhausted. I would say the SIBO individuals, I have so much empathy for them. They've just really exhausted so much trial and error with diet. And what I say is start small. Start with some supplements, take the pressure off from a nervous system perspective, focus on hydration as well. And honestly, a lot of sleep. So I look at sleep and sometimes fasting tools to help those individuals before I'd go to nutrition.
And, for anyone listening, the other thing I would add to that is that if you have SIBO and you've taken rifaximin round after round and you have endometriosis, when I refer people to surgeons, I will say, I have a high level of clinical suspicion there's something is going on with the digestive tract as it relates to their endo. So if you're going to, if we're going to go with imaging, doing a gel MRI, that's a great way to take a look. We can do an abdominal ultrasound. We can't always see everything and it's not definitive, but I think it's better to have the imaging and to know what you're going in on than to go in blind. But I let the surgeon know this because often what I'll see with SIBO when it's time and time again and it's not getting better, they find lesions on the intestines and they might not have looked there had somebody not cued them in. So if you are someone who's experiencing that, that's worth letting your surgeon know that I would like you to check what is going on with my digestive tract, because sometimes, we look at the motility. There's the migrating motor complex, which is, I like to call it the street sweeper of the gut. And it's the nervous system that's going to move everything through. If you have endo, you have inflammation, and that inflammation can be causing nervous system dysregulation. Right. That's why we see anxiety. That's why we see insomnia, but it's also why we can see motility issues. We can see nerve pain. It's why do I have this nerve pain? This doesn't even make sense.
Yes.
And so I think that's a really important thing for women to cue into. You brought up histamine. Histamine is connected to endometriosis. Can you tell us about that connection and what women should know about endometriosis and histamine and food?
Yeah. And we're seeing this more and more. Maybe it's awareness and education. And when we're yes, like you said, just listen to them. They know this. They just didn't know to connect the dot between histamine or their allergies. And they're like, oh yeah, but I don't have painful periods, but I have painful ovulation. And we see that a lot. We see histamine rise because we need it at ovulation. So, histamine is important for us, and, it rises and it cycles with our cycle as well. So we see individuals where there's a lot of pain at ovulation, and histamine, rises with estrogen. So there is a connection with histamine and estrogen. And a lot of the individuals are I have to avoid all histamine foods, but that's not necessarily a long-term solution. Mm-hmm. It definitely can give you immediate relief, avoiding some of those, probiotic foods, fermented foods we avoid any leftovers. And that gives them like, oh yeah, I do feel better. I do feel like I'm not reacting as much. Great. But how are we able to then support clearance of estrogen and clearance of histamine? So it's not necessarily an overload perspective that I take, but also a clearance perspective. And it goes back to the gut. Is that whole, digestive detox clearance pathway. If our drainage pathways of our immune system, of our digestive and detox pathway, the liver, that gallbladder, we see a lot of liver and gallbladder supports coming in here. And by doing that, whether it's things like milk thistle, NAC, resveratrol, like helping that liver methylation tools, but also helping the bile and things like TUDCA or even bitters like arugula, dandelion, getting the bile flow. Those supports, along with everything else we talked about, but sweeping the full gut, has definitely seen over like 2 to 3 months a lower reaction in, the histamine response through ovulation and through the cycle. We also see individuals who get like that flu right before their period, that flu feeling. So this is all, immune system, histamine, estrogen, balancing and talking to each other and clearing through those pathways.
Yeah. And for people listening, so when histamine goes up, it can cause the mast cells to release, when estrogen goes up, it can cause the mast cells to release histamine. And then the histamine can perpetuate the estrogen cycle. And so that's why you're talking specifically about how do we eliminate the estrogen. And this is not, women always, I feel like if you're in your 20s, you're like, estrogen is the worst. And if you're in your late 40s, you're like, no, I don't want to do anything to eliminate estrogen. And it's like, well, we're talking about the estrogen you no longer need.
Yes.
This is the estrogen that your body's like, we did it. We're done with it. Let's get it moved out. So you brought up some supplements. What are some of your favorite supplements to use in this situation to help with clearing out estrogen, especially when somebody can't tolerate cruciferous vegetables, which we know are like gold star winners of helping with estrogen?
Yeah, I mean, and you brought a key point there is like, it's important to know that, especially as you hit the 40s and perimenopause, like, like I'm in that phase right now where you're like, you want to keep all the estrogen you can. But it's the right estrogen that you want, right? Like, and it's a good estrogen. And so it's, clearing out, xenoestrogens and like endocrine disrupting type of estrogens is still, very important, especially important as we get hit perimenopause. So I would say, instead of like going to DIM, like I know DIM is great, but I always say, get your data. Like get your data before, and that's why nutrition you can explore. But once you're getting into the world of supplements, I love to get the data, whether it's serum, day 21 or day 3, like estrogen, or we use a lot of the Dutch test in our clinic as well. Get to know where you're at before you heavy supplement on bringing estrogen down. But I do love resveratrol. I do love sulforaphane, and I know you have this hormone balance supplement. That
Balanced women's hormone supplement, which only has 50 milligrams of DIM.
Yeah,
and people are always like, "This is too little DIM because I heard you need 100 or more." I'm like, "Do you want to hate your life?" Because no matter what age you're at, if you start taking, like I have had people that are like, "Oh, DIM gives me massive migraines. I had hot flashes. I felt horrible." I've seen this at so many ages, and there's supplements on Amazon that are like 500 plus milligrams of DIM. And I'm like, you just tanked your estrogen super, super hard. But yeah, it has DIM, it has sulforaphane, it has resveratrol, it has mustard seed, which is actually how you activate that sulforaphane. So we've put it together in a way where it is gentle, but I do not recommend it for late stage perimenopause when your estrogen is declining rapidly or just not there, or you're in menopause unless you're on HRT. And so I always try to caveat that, because sometimes I get women that are like, I tried this, I didn't feel better. And then, my customer service is like, how old are you? And they're like 62. I'm like, this is not for you. Like, this is, sorry, your ovaries, they're not jump starting again.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you have to look at where you're at in your age. And I'm also like, what are your goals? Because I think if we try to track everything with endometriosis, it's hard. Like, we take a very goal approached, a goal-focused approach. Like, what is your immediate 2 goals? Is it quality of life back? Is it fertility? Is it this endo belly and maybe just this endo weight that you're carrying? What are your goals? Because, some people are like, I just want more energy. Like, endo fatigue is real. And I'm like, it's not because you're lazy. stop because you're just tired. Like it is like immune driven, this fatigue that's coming up for you. So really get to know your goals and then get to know like, what are your boundaries? Is food easy for you or not? Or maybe we should go to supplements, and that way get your data and build out a supplement plan that works for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, I mean, do you know how many people, I've been there before too, guinea pig too, like where I have a cabinet of supplements, it's just expired. Cause I'm trying everything and anything that like, oh, my friend's neighbor, has suggested, because everything got better for her after that one supplement or that one food.
Yeah, it's called the supplement graveyard. And the reality is that a lot of times too, I think people aren't patient enough to recognize, like they're like, I take ibuprofen, I have no pain. So I take turmeric and I have no pain. I take NAC, I have no pain. It doesn't work that way. Magnesium, I will say that one's a little more instantaneous, but when it comes to supplements and natural therapies, like changing your diet, that's going to take 2 to 3 months before you're like, I'm noticing a significant difference.
Yes.
And on that same note, if you're having the worst period of your life, it's not what you did 2 days ago. It's usually what you did 2 months ago. And we don't frame things in that way within our society to actually understand that the menstrual cycle, the impact on the menstrual cycle, it goes back months. And so 3 months to change your menstrual cycle for the worst or for the better, and you get to choose.
Yeah, absolutely. And we get this comment like, oh, like my hair. And I'm like, what happened 3 months ago? That's my first question. When I get a symptom of like, or someone's coming new to us and they're like, well, I have this going on. I'm like, and they might just been working like 1 week into supplements. I'm like, okay, but like what happened 3 months ago? Tell me about it. Talk to me about it. And it's usually a life event. They've moved, they changed jobs, or there was a stress, or maybe, they had another like pill that they had just stopped, and they don't notice the side effects of it until a few months after. So you're absolutely right. And but a lot of women are educated in this too. I want to just acknowledge that too, is that you brought it before, is like women should be heard. And how many times I got asked if I'm in the medical field when I was like an engineer. They're like, oh, are you in medicine? I'm like, no, I just had to go to the library and read everything and study everything, because I felt like that 5 minutes, all they told me was the same thing they told me 2 months ago in my last appointment. And so many women feel like they have gotten a PhD in this. And it's just not fair. Like we should not have to spend, half our lives studying all of stuff just to go to an appointment and then be dismissed or gaslit again.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that I just want to highlight what you said. Women are, one, having time away from their life stolen from them because they are in pain. And even if it's not pain, you're gaining weight, you're fatigued, you have anxiety, you have insomnia, you have the myriad of symptoms that can come with endometriosis. Then you have to spend even more time researching everything about endometriosis.
Yeah.
Then you have to spend your resource of your time and your money to go to a doctor who then dismisses everything, even if you bring them studies sometimes. And you're right, it's absolutely not fair, because you're losing such a significant portion of your life. And it's an impact beyond just period pain, going back to what you said earlier. You brought up endo belly. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So, maybe not everybody listening knows what endo belly is. So let's start there.
Yeah. 80% of women with endometriosis are shown to have like dysbiosis, or like a gut disruption. And, it manifests in different ways for individuals. We see a lot of constipation. We also see a lot of, loose bowels, but we also see a lot of distended bellies. And so, you're like, oh, I woke up and I was like, pretty flat, and I drank some water, or I just had one meal, and then boom, I look 5 months pregnant.
Yeah.
And how many times, like when I was in my, infertility years, I was like, people would say like, are you pregnant? Oh, like you're pregnant. I'm like, no, it's just inflammation. And it's just this inability to like get down again, no matter how much I exercise and no matter how much Pilates I do, that did not change it. And so really it is about, kind of like that dysbiosis, a dysregulation of your gut bacteria and its ability to just regulate, the enzymes, all of the digestive processes. And people are like, but I don't even eat bad. I've been eating clean. And that's the tiring part of it, is so many women, they've gone gluten-free, they've gone dairy-free, they've gotten sugar-free, they've even gone meat-free, and I did that too. I went vegan because I was like, okay, I got a little bit better I was a picky eater, right? And then I add some vegetables in, like, this is great. And then I changed my food even more. I'm like, this is great. And then I went vegan because I was like, okay, veganism, this is the way. And I did feel great. And I thought that this is it. Like, guys, like, I feel great, but it still didn't knock out that endo belly, and it didn't knock out like my infertility. It didn't knock out, all of those underlying symptoms, even though generally I did feel better. And that's what I'm saying is like, diets may change your inflammation and get you feeling, but then there's this underlying mechanism that might still be out of balance. And so for me, like, that diet trial and error, I've been there and done that, especially for endo belly, because it just sticks out. And at this point I'd lost some weight, but I didn't lose the endo belly. And so the endo belly is really about rebalancing that gut microbiome, getting to the right fibers for you so that you can get things like short chain fatty acids and, other things to work within your gut lining and get the gut lining soothed. I always say that that's your terrain. It's not necessarily your diet, but something in the terrain, like your digestive tract, is off.
Yeah.
It's going to be different for you than it is going to be for someone else. So as much as you hear, and that's the challenge with Instagram these days and like TikTok is like, there's almost like now too much information. And you're like trying to say, okay, say like Post-it notes, and you just keep saving all these Post-it notes. And then you have like 1,000 Post-it notes of like, which one should I try? Because they're all saying I should do AIP for endobelly. I should go vegan for endobelly. I should take probiotics for endobelly, but that flares up my endobelly. Like, so I think endobelly is probably one of the most complex, but if you get down to the simple way to approach it, here's what I would do. I would first, again, I'm going to go back to sleep. Making sure you sleep and take an overnight fast of like 14 hours. Let your gut get a break and do its work. I feel like our bodies are so powerful if we just, sometimes give it a break. And so for me, sleep was one of my biggest things of waiting to regulate that nervous system, because when I was awake, I was on. My brain was like an overthinker. I could like think, a million miles a minute. So being able to get to sleep, allowing my gut to clear, have bowel movements, adding in some of the right fiber, but also electrolytes. I was really depleted and dehydrated.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm drinking water and then I'm bloating. So I don't need more water, do I? Yes, I did. I just needed to be hydrated in the right way. So adding in some electrolytes really helped me too.
Well, I want to emphasize, you said that endobelly, you mentioned inflammation. So for people to understand, because whenever we're bloated, people think gas. This is not gas. It is full-blown inflammation. Your intestines are actually inflamed, and the endobelly isn't just uncomfortable. It's painful because nerves are getting stimulated as things get stretched. You're not meant to be distended. This is not a normal way to go about life. I dealt with endobelly personally. I actually posted pictures online where I did look like 4 months pregnant. And it was just unbelievable, like how bad the bloating was, and like praise stretchy pants, because if it wasn't for the elastic waistband, like I'm like, I actually went and bought like muumuu kind of dresses, because I was like, if I have this kind of flare, like I just can't have anything on my abdomen. And you brought up the right fibers for you. Something that I incorporated is cold potatoes. So I cook the potatoes, cool them, and then eat those. And this is another thing that became like a full-time job of like making sure I got enough fiber diversity in. But the resistant starches, they really helped. It took several months for that to go away, but eventually it did. The other thing is that I have a women's probiotic, and it has a particular prebiotic that's compatible with SIBO. And I've had a past history of SIBO. So I was like, I know this will work, and I can incorporate this as well. And I think it's so important, like you said, to make sure that you're also looking at your fibers, because the first thing I think a lot of people think is fiber feeds bacteria, bacteria produce gas. I've got gas, like I don't need that. And in reality, we need to increase diversity in the intestines, because the gut bugs will work for you. Sometimes we do need antibiotics, we need antiparasitics, we need antifungals, we need something that's antiseptic like rifaximin. Sometimes we need those things, but your gut unlikely has a pathogenic organism. Like that's more rare to see, something that's like disease causing, as much as it has commensal flora that are imbalanced. And commensal flora, for any woman who's had a yeast infection, you're familiar with that. You have yeast in your vagina. Given the opportunity, that commensal flora is going to overgrow. So how do we keep it in check? Well, Lactobacillus acidophilus is like one of the primary species that helps keep it in check. Within your gut if you eat diversity of fiber, you have diversity of organisms, they can also help keep that in check. But it is really painful. And sometimes women, I mean, I've seen women who are like, I only want to water fast. When I have a flare like this, like, what do you recommend in terms of like soothing foods if you're in an endo belly kind of flare situation?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there are some women who just like, they're like, yeah, they want to avoid food. I have so many that just don't eat all day because it's going to create a flare. It's going to create this, distended belly. They don't want to go to work with this distended belly. They'll drink some coffee, get through the day, and maybe eat a meal at night. And this is not, the route to healing the gut. We love to add in like things like aloe vera.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I like to add in L-glutamine, but we have to be careful if there is SIBO because that can sometimes, glutamine and magnesium are great, but with SIBO, you have to, dose that really correctly. But aloe vera, the inner leaf of it is always super soothing. Bone broth, we love that. And, having those teas of turmeric and ginger with some black pepper in it. Those are some of the three things that I would say, over a month or two, you are going to see the soothing effects of it. But then you have to look at, how do I not avoid skipping meals? Like, because that is not the solution. And that actually probably isn't the problem either. When you eat, it's not like, it may feel like that is the problem, but that's not the problem. The problem really is, like you said, that imbalance of bacteria. And we know that there is, this lots of studies that there's like, a meta-analysis done on studies with the gut microbiome with women with endometriosis. It is imbalanced. So working slowly to rebalance that, because it doesn't happen overnight. You can't just take a probiotic and expect like in a couple of days, everything's going to be great. Absolutely. You can add in supplementing.
It would be so great,
Right.
everyone, but it's not that way.
Like probiotics, prebiotics, I love, like you can supplement that. You can add in resistant starches. There are, also resistant starches supplements. If you feel like the food is not there are resistant starches. There's I think RS fiber from Designs for Health makes one. I think there's sun fiber. These things add in the support for short chain fatty acids, so that will help our gut over time. But again, patience. And this is the difficult part, is finding a couple of these supplements, trying some of these foods that we've talked about through this episode here, and putting them in play with consistency and giving your body some patience. And it's so hard. And I feel almost like, bad asking for women, because they've had patience. They've tried a lot, and they've suffered a lot. And, like they're doing this on the side of their desk, on the side of their families. But if you can give yourself some consistent, support through 2 to 3 months, you will see that your terrain does respond.
Yeah. And just to underscore, giving yourself 2 to 3 months is so important, because again, endometriosis isn't something that developed overnight. You had stage 4, I had stage 4. It's kind of worthless actually, to even use the stages anymore, because the Enzian score is really is so much more telling about where it is in your body and what is going on. But, for people who don't know, stage 4 is like worst of the worst, like worst case scenario. And that's not something that, like, just because you got your period the first time and it's painful, like you automatically just had stage 4. I mean, for most of us, this condition is developing over years, and most of us are also being neglected. As we were talking before we recorded, I told you were like, oh, thank God you wrote Beyond the Pill. And I was like, yeah, I wrote it. And I was like, stop giving women the pill for period pain, because it turns out to be endo later and you need to work them up. And then it's me 29 years later, after 10 years on the pill. And I'm like, damn it, I'm the person from Beyond the Pill who had endometriosis. But I look back and I'm like, I'm so angry. And it's really funny because I've worked with like therapists and intuitive healers and stuff, and everyone's like, you need to let go of this anger, like you need to let it go. And I'm like, no, it's mine. I won't let it go, and I'm not holding it in. I'm taking this anger and I'm putting out information where I'm like, no one else who comes into my space is ever going to have to deal with this again and have this level of medical neglect and have this much pain and have this much heartache, because I'm going to take this anger, and every time I feel mad about it, I'm going to make content about it. I'm going to write about it. I'm going to put information out to try to change the world. So I'm like, I don't want to work on like, just let it go. I'm not freaking Elsa. I'm not going to let it go. I am very much going to build a blizzard that is going to like take down the medical empire that just profits off of us.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love all of that. I love all of it because, it has a purpose, right? Like, and that pain, like that same thing with me, my pain turned into my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I was suffering when I was getting my engineering degree. Like I could not walk. I had an accessibility parking pass. I had to park at my university. Like so much shame and embarrassment in this because I did not look sick. And then when I got into corporate, I was in technology and then slowly into management consulting. And I had no business being where I am today. But the endo was so bad for me. My VP was once like, but you look fine. He's like, but I don't get it. Like you're shady. You don't attend work often. But the business loves you and they rave about you. So I'm not sure what's happening, but and then like literally he just walked out of the room at that point.
Yeah.
I handed him my notice a month later. But the moment that this came true for me was I had 5 surgeries. I had gone through like the Lupron, like I was in a room dark. I didn't want anyone to open that door. I would scream at you. The doctor gave me anxiety pills. He's like, okay, then you need this on top of it. And then maybe we'll do another surgery because now hopefully it's all like tamed down. And like, I don't want another thing of that, nor do I want another anxiety pill. I'm done. And I just was like, I don't know what the other way is, but I just know that that is not the way.
Yeah.
Like you can't keep telling me that I need to be cut open over and over and over again. Like 5 is enough.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went on this journey and made myself a guinea pig and spent hours, like tens and hundreds of hours researching this and trialing error on myself. And I finally got to a place where I was bleeding and I was like, I'm having my period.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't feel it. I didn't have spotting. I didn't have a migraine. I didn't throw up. I wasn't on the floor crying and sobbing. Like, and this is my body working. It was like, oh my God. And I did. I felt angry for everything that I put my body through, thinking that it was so broken and thinking that I was just never going to get better. And it really hurts if I think about it. At one point then I told my husband, like, I never want to say the word endometriosis again. I literally said that to him. And lo and behold, I then went into the infertility journey.
Now you're like, and I'm the endometriosis.
Yes. But then we went into, but then what the doctor said, if you may not have kids because it was that bad on the ovaries. And my FSH was like in my 20s, in its 20s. I get that, like, she's like, you're premenopausal from your ovarian reserve perspective. The clinic's like, we don't know what to do with you either. It's unexplained infertility. We can do we did the IUIs, we did this and that, and like, we don't know. And then lo and behold, got pregnant on my own. We had 3 children. And it was my doctor who did the surgeries and had to help me deliver the kids who said, more women should do this. She's like, remember we were debating a hysterectomy for you?
Yeah.
And in that moment, I decided, because I by then I was like, I talked health all day long in my family, like every woman. I got the PhD, unofficial PhD. But I was like, yes, more women need to follow this. And I took that in pain and made it into a purpose. And lo and behold, this is where I'm at. And I had no business turning it. My parents were like, what do you do? You're becoming a nutritionist? Like, they were just confused. They're like, You're fine. Like, you're living your life. Why are you going to go do this? I'm like, because too many women are suffering.
I want to talk about what you did with nutrition and fertility, because I think that's really important in this conversation. But I want to start going into the fertility piece with you recently speaking out against ACOG's recent statement. And I'll say ACOG's recent statement basically said, there's no reason to investigate, calling it unknown infertility. That's enough. Like, we don't know the cause of it. Like, and we don't need to know the cause of it. We just need to get women into IVF. And by them pursuing the cause of it, them pursuing endometriosis diagnosis, ACOG, I'm coming for you. But them pursuing all that, they're wasting their time when they could just get to IVF. And the reality is that a lot of unexplained infertility does turn out to be endometriosis. That was my story. I was told I was old. I'm like, I had a baby at 40. They're like, well, now a year later, you're just old and your eggs don't work. And so like the only thing we can do is IVF. And I had so much blood work, so much testing done. And I go through IVF. And here's the thing. I had horrible periods. My entire, jumpstart to my period journey, I get put on the pill for that. I then think I'm so clever of like, I just won't even have a period because even on the pill, they still sucked. They still hurt. It wasn't better. I had multiple ruptured ovarian cysts. At any point, someone could have clocked this as endo.
Yeah.
And then I come off, I've already got a nutrition degree. My period goes missing. So I'm like, I got to get that back. And then it comes back and it's hell all over again. And I worked on that from nutrition and lifestyle, got out of pain. So doctor said, this couldn't be endometriosis. You have no pain. That's not what's going on. It was going through IVF that flared my endo so bad, so bad. And nobody talks about that. My third egg retrieval, I couldn't walk. And it was 3 weeks. And they were like, take oral NSAIDs and take it under the tongue. And how about some tramadol, which is an opioid as well. And I'm like, none of this touches the pain. None of it is touching the pain. And I found the endometriosis I just incidentally, Prunova was like, hey girl, want a full body MRI? If you post about it, we'll trade. I'm like, cool. You guys know I'm full transparency about stuff like this. I got that done and they were like, this sure looks like endo. We can't diagnose that. You need to get this worked up further. And when I went to my fertility doctor, so I had one fertility doctor, she left, get put with this other guy who's the head of the clinic. And I'm like, look, I got endo and I have adenomyosis. And he's like, adenomyosis is just a new trendy diagnosis, like ADHD. I'm like, well, I freaking have ADHD too. And there's actually a connection to all this. But he was like, your endometriosis doesn't matter. Just keep doing cycles, just keep transferring. And that is exactly what ACOG is getting behind. And their entire statement is based on profit and not the well-being of people. IVF is so inefficient. I was looking at a recent study that was just like hundreds of millions of cycles and like I think it was like 38 million success out of like, I'm probably skewing these numbers right now, but I just looked at the percent of success. It's less than 50%.
Yeah,
in fact, in a lot of
about it somewhere, it's not good.
in a lot of cases, it's less than 30%.
Yeah.
You're going to go through IVF. You're going to spend $30,000 per cycle. You're going to have to do 4 or more cycles. Like, what are we looking at? Like hundreds of thousands of dollars with less than a 30% chance success rate. And ACOG is like, just get there, just do it, just pay the bills. And they're not even recognizing that there are things that can be done. Why wouldn't we want to do nutrition? If you're not fertile, something is going on with your body. We need to figure out why, because that's not a natural state. And whatever it is going to affect the outcome of a baby. Like, why wouldn't we want to offer women that? Anyhow, I could rant forever, but I want you to say your piece on it because I know you also spoke out and I felt like there was only a handful of us in those comments saying this. Like there was in terms of practitioners, because it was all of these patients, especially when with endometriosis, being like, we don't get diagnosed on average for 7 to 10 years. We live with horrible, horrible symptoms. You do nothing to actually train the detection of this. ACOG does not make sure that only the right people are operating on this. They offer no protections. And then they're out here just being these greedy little goblins being like, oh yeah, just get to IVF. Let's take your money on this. And it was you and me, endosurgeon Jeff, like a few practitioners in there, but so many patients in the comments being like, this is wrong. And that's why in my comment, I was like, you need to listen to women. Like, why are you not? Look at what these women are saying. And you're just out here just being like, just pay us.
Keep going. Keep pushing through, and keep hurting yourself. Because that's what it is. If you're in a flared up state, if your hormones are imbalanced, your immune system signaling, fires everywhere, and you just throw yourself into another retrieval cycle, like it is, women are coming out feeling horrible.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh no, let's go into your transfer now. And they're like, they can't even imagine going to transfer.
Let's flare you with inflammation, knowing damn well, at least you should know because you're a freaking doctor, that, this flare is going to raise natural killer cells. Those are going to kill a fetus. Like, I say that as somebody who has lost multiple embryo transfers. And I look back at this and I'm like, God, if I had the knowledge that I had now, like things would have been so different. But the idea that like we're going to do a retrieval. We're going to flare you. We're going to make a
Yeah.
hostile environment in your uterus. And then we're going to just put an embryo in there.
Transfer, yeah.
And so much of this is also being driven by private equity groups. And I want people to understand that IVF and women's fertility and these predatory behaviors are because private equity groups are like, push women into as many cycles as possible.
Well, I mean, it is an opportunity financially. If you think about how much infertility is on the rise, our fertility rates are dropping,
Mhm.
right? And we have to look at what's going on. What is going on? And there's many reasons when it's I mean, it's unexplained, or is it we just didn't have the time to go through and explain it? We have a label for you, it's unexplained. But really, there might be lesions.
Yeah.
You know, there might be endometriosis, right? There might be egg quality issues. There might be immune dysfunction, right? Because that uterus, it is brilliant. I always tell our clients, it is brilliant. It knows when it's safe enough to receive, and it has the blueprint for human development.
Mhm.
It's not going to just listen because some signaling's coming in and saying, grow a baby now. Like, it's going to be like, no, sorry, not working, right? And so we really have to, like you said, listen to women, because I've had clients that come with 3, 4, 5 failed IVF cycles,
Mhm.
and they're depleted. And it takes us anywhere from 4 months minimum to 1 year to get them out of that flare,
Mhm.
post all of these cycles that they've been through, getting their body just to really find safety again and get their hormones, you know, to balance out, get that gut, you know, nourished again, get those eggs nourished again. And then we are very supportive of saying, hey, let's support you into your IVF cycle now. Because now your body's feeling good, it
Mhm.
feels right, you know, maybe it's a retrieval. So we've had supports of women going into retrieval cycles that have been very successful, into IVF cycle, but it requires a full integrative approach. And I know you had that episode, I think, with maybe it was your own surgeon, where we talked about endo mapping
Mhm.
and mapping that whole body out, understanding what's going on, look at your nutrition, look at your terrain, because anti-inflammatory isn't just a diet. It's a state of your body, in the metabolic state of your body, the hormonal state of your body. All of these are so important. And if you're spending tens of thousands, you're throwing yourself like it's a baby. A baby is a lifelong commitment.
Mhm.
Give yourselves, you know, that voice to say, you know what, I want to take 3, 6 months and really do these foundational things, because that's what they are. They're foundational, to get back to a fertile state of the body.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that it's so important to recognize that you don't have to forego IVF if that's what you think is your best chance, but you have to recognize. So, something that I found really helpful, I did a fourth retrieval. So my women's hormone support, I actually went on that. I was like, I need to clear estrogen and have the right estrogens. My doctor supported me on that. So this was like my fourth retrieval. I wanted a little bit of a flare too, because I was going to go into excision surgery. I'm like, I want you to find everything. But what happens in IVF is that when you're doing an egg retrieval, you're injecting yourself with FSH, typically LH as well. And that is causing your estrogen levels to rise. I mean, your estrogen levels, they can be in like the 300s. Sometimes women are much higher than that. That is going to stimulate that endometriosis tissue. So wherever it is in your body is going to grow. So I don't want women. So, I don't know. I feel like I just have to be clear on this, because I think sometimes women are just like, oh, so you're anti-IVF? No, because I clearly did IVF. It's always like when people are like, oh, you're anti-birth control because you're
I
criticizing
hear all the
it.
time, are you anti-surgery? I'm like, no, I'm not anti anything. I'm like, whatever is right for you.
Absolutely.
And an integrative approach with a little bit of a pause before you go into anything. Let's just pause and look at everything, because the whole rush and quick fix and fast food approach to this is what I don't like.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about nutrition specifically. So let's talk about nutrition in general. So for supporting fertility, and then we can get more nuanced on supporting someone through an IVF cycle.
Yeah. So for fertility support, it is really important for us to get into kind of reducing oxidative stress, reducing inflammation. And so I love, these fatty fish, omega supports. I love flax again. I love all of those. I love arugula and a lot of bitters like dandelion as well, whether it's milk thistle tea you like for your liver. So really taking a diverse approach. I love my blueberries. I love my, unpeeled carrots. Like I always say, easy snacks to have. But eggs as well, like for the choline and just all of those, those rich vitamins. So we like dense nutrient foods here for fertility. And I also love supplementation here.
Mhm.
So things like CoQ10, again, resveratrol will come back in here as well. I love magnesium. And then instead of supplementing with melatonin, I always say sleep is huge for fertility support. So optimizing that cortisol cycle with melatonin
Mhm.
is probably where we start. We're like, your monthly cycle for fertility needs your daily cycle to be supported. So
Mhm.
get out there in the morning, get some sunshine, get that cortisol signaled from your body, because it could be high, it could be low. We see both of them. But get some sunshine, get outside, get that lymphatic system moving as well, because that lymphatic system is going to help you clear out toxins, clear out inflammation. So move your body, get outside in that morning sun for cortisol. And then at nighttime, get your blue light blockers on so that melatonin can start to peak before midnight. I always say it's important for melatonin to start, rising well before midnight. So this doom scrolling or, TV, the blue lights or even the pot lights in our house, get your blue light blockers on and get to sleep at a decent time. That's going to be my number one place where I start with fertility is your 24-hour cycle. I do appreciate fasting because we've seen this it does help, with fertility rates as well. Well, it's not just fasting, I want to say, because I'm not a fan of intermittent fasting. I'm not a fan of skipping meals. But what I am a fan of is at least 12 to 14 hours overnight to induce that autophagy. We really have a cellular cleanup. We have a mess in our cells when there's endometriosis. It's just, something that we have to accept and love about ourselves. But how do we induce that cleaning mechanism? Is a lot of it is being able to give ourselves a digestive and, sleep break at night and induce that autophagy process where I call it's like our Pac-Man come out. Our Pac-Man come out and clear out cellular debris and things that don't belong, and really that is essential because it goes right into the ovaries too, into that pelvic cavity and clearing out things and re-regulating all of that signaling that's happening within our body.
Yeah. And I love that you emphasize melatonin. Melatonin actually has been shown in the research to be helpful for endometriosis pain, and it acts as an antioxidant in our ovaries,
Yes.
also our brain as well. So we love
Huge.
that. And so that's a really, I think, important one that we highlight there. On top of, the ways that we can be eating, to overall just be supporting the detox capacity of our body. Often people will say like, you don't need to detox because your body does it for you. And I'm like, I always say, how are your kidneys working without water? How's that going? There are inputs. You're an engineer, so I feel like this is your language. There are inputs. If you want the machine to like have the output and the outcomes that you want, you have to put in the right inputs. So I want to shift to around somebody going through an IVF cycle. They have endometriosis. You were talking about prepping their body several months before. We know the egg can take around 90 days to really need, it's going to take 90 days at least for the final maturation process. So that's when we really want to be emphasizing our nutrition. A year in advance is even better.
Oh,
I
yes.
always say that.
Oh, yeah.
Like whenever you want a baby yesterday, you want a baby in your arms now. You don't want to be like, okay, I'm going to give myself a year. So I just say that like a year is great if you have the time to think about it. But if you don't, what can they be doing right now?
Yeah. There's a lot of things that you can be doing right now is making sure you get enough, fat and, making sure you get enough vitamin D as well. Alongside that is just making sure, we all talk about the vitamin D, cholesterol synthesis, and the entire sex hormone pathway. So really making sure you get fats, but then you support yourself with good vitamin D, sunshine exposure and bile and gallbladder support to help move all of those fats through the system as well. That's going to be one thing. So whether it's eggs, whether it's fatty fishes, flax and chia seeds, I love pumpkin seeds. They have a lot of good minerals in it. Sunflower seeds. So I even do seed cycling with individuals, just so that you're not feeling like you're eating all the seeds all the time. And some people can't do seeds, and that's okay too. Like, if your gut doesn't like seeds, we see it a lot. That's okay. There's a whole bunch of food. There's food for everybody. And also there's going to be a post or a study somewhere that will promote each food. And there'll be one that probably says this food is not good for you. And that's the confusion out there. So I say, do what fits best with you. But yeah, eggs, fatty fish, getting in some, protein. I for my own body, even though I went vegan and trial and error that, I feel like animal protein does better for me. I digest it better. But initially, I didn't believe that. And this is the challenge is because you do need protein and fat with women. If you feel like, oh, I don't do well with, proteins, especially, meat proteins, or I don't do well with fats, I would say, let's look at your digestive tract. Like, how can we support your gut? Is it some enzymes? Is it something like as simple as lemon water or apple cider vinegar to boost that acidity in the gut? Because we all need fat and we all need protein. So starting there. And if you're already sharing, like, legumes are great. And I love tempeh as well. Just make sure you soak your legumes, properly over 24 hours so that it's easier to digest. And then in terms of we love all of the colors of, fruits. So we like, all of our raspberries has good fiber in it, blueberries as well. I love the vegetables, the cruciferous vegetables, but I love garlic here, onion here, leeks here, asparagus, artichoke. These are all great foods to have. And then, for your carbohydrates, like you said, cooled potatoes, definitely probably, a great one. And then sweet potatoes, carrots and beets as well. I would minimize in the fertility journey. We do minimize grains. We find that with the insulin balancing and carb tolerance, it is safer to go low grain or no grain for the 3 months before.
But that's not low carb. Can you explain that to
Yes.
people?
I always say low grain and ensuring it's your carb tolerance. So everybody has a different carb tolerance based on your metabolic state. And so you might have numbers like your fasting insulin checked, or your HbA1c or hemoglobin A1c checked, or you may have even leptin checked. So these are, indicators of where is your metabolic state right now. But also you could tell yourself when you eat, different grains and different carbs, how do you do? No carb versus low carb is completely two different things. Vegetables that are, very starchy and grains that are very starchy will spike your blood sugar. And that can trigger inflammation in a lot of individuals. So what we want to do is be low grain and low starch carbs. And that means we have a lot of vegetables in us, and these are high in carbohydrates. They're all carbohydrate rich, but they are not going to spike your blood sugar. And that is important. It is very important to not spike blood sugar ahead of a fertility journey.
Why?
Because it induces inflammation, and that inflammation is going to go to all of those neural pathways, right? That anxiety, the gut, and then our ovaries. And our ovaries are highly sensitive to the cycles of blood sugar. And we want to make sure that as much stability we can give to our, from our cortisol perspective or a blood sugar perspective, those two being stabilized will then further stabilize our estrogen and progesterone too.
And for women with PCOS, this is especially important because while you make lots of follicles, that insulin going up stimulates the ovaries to produce testosterone, and that can be detrimental to the quality of your eggs. And so whenever I see people online, they're like, women with endometriosis, women with PCOS, we have so many eggs. So we're going to be able to get pregnant. And I'm like, that they're not very good quality because of the inflammation, the insulin, and the testosterone, but we can change that. That can be changed. I always feel like, with men, they get a sperm analysis that's not so good, and they're like, oh, I feel bad about myself. And I think with women, and when we hear our egg quality is not good, we also feel like something a letdown in ourselves, like something is wrong with us. But a lot of times, there's certain situations we can't, but a lot of times we can influence the egg quality. And I know that there's research studies saying no, that's not possible. I have seen it with patients. I've personally done it myself. One of the things that you haven't mentioned, which was a game changer for me, was NAD. And bringing in NAD, I did IV, and then I was doing sublingual. For a while, I was doing IM shots of it as well, or subcutaneous, actually. There's seriously so many shots in IVF, which I was like, which one was that? But that was the subcutaneous that I did for a while. These NAD really, it was one of the many things that I did that took me from no euploid embryos, my first retrieval, to 3 euploid embryos, my third retrieval. So that was something that I can definitely attribute to having better results as part of the kitchen sink approach that most of us have to take. And unfortunately, it's not very easy to study. But so let's say they're going to be in an IVF cycle. They have endometriosis. So that cycle is going to be anywhere of 10, maybe 14 days. What are they doing during that period of time?
Yeah. And I do think that there is the right, not like the full kitchen sink, but the right kitchen sink. So yes, we do, when you're at that point where you've tried it all and you've done this integrated life cycle, for 3 months, and then you're at that point where you're getting ready. Yeah, it is about the kitchen sink because you have a big goal and we want to support it. So we are going to ramp up on antioxidants. So we ramp up on antioxidants nutrient wise. If we want to do, vitamin C, E, NAC, resveratrol, or a blend of those are going to go up. We love krill oil as our omega-3 at this point because it's an antioxidant type of krill oil as well. And, hopefully leading up to it, you've done maybe some Vitex to support the progesterone. We also see that, things like calcium D is important ahead of this, but then we stop it. So we do stop some of the estrogen and progesterone balancing hormones right before the cycle comes out. And we really focus on getting good sleep in. Like you said, the melatonin comes in here. We've used different types of herbs as well for individuals, but those are really personalized. And I would say making sure that you have a support system during the 14 days ahead. I can't emphasize how often it is like, hey, if no one else, come text us, chat with us in our platform and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. Because that's where that mind-body connection can really take over. And even the simple things like you can't sleep anymore. You're not even able to get for your daily walk. You're overthinking your results. You're getting into that fear mindset. And that mind-body connection piece is really important those 2 weeks ahead, even to stay consistent with your food and supplements. It's really grounding yourself every day. So literally getting into whatever grounding tools are good for you, finding a support system and staying consistent with those few supplements and that few diet and allowing for all of the tools and accepting. At this point, I'm like, also accept everything that's being injected into you and seeing it as also the right fuel. Because sometimes we have this trauma from IVF cycles, and then you're going back into that cycle, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like your fear, you're afraid of the shots again. You're like, what are these shots going to do to me? And it's about supporting yourself through that and accepting that, okay, this is now like the right way to do this for myself, and finding safety as you progress through.
What would you say to a client whose doctor is telling them this is just unexplained infertility, just do IVF?
I would ask them to find another doctor first and really maybe get educated on saying like, what are possible explanations and say, okay, if you find this is unexplainable, what are some potential explanations that there could be out there? And when you look at it from an IVF perspective, what supports do you have that you believe will work for me? And if you ask them that and say, hey, so why do you think that will work for me? Why do you think I need to be on antibiotics? Why do you think I need to be on thinners? Why do I need to be on steroids? What are those addressing? Because are those potential insights into what might be off in my body? Like if I need to be on prednisone, if I need to be on dexamethasone now, because the prednisone wasn't strong enough. Now they're saying dexamethasone. Why? What are you reading of my body, and getting to share that and having that back and forth conversation to understand if they're using something that's potentially addressing something that's not working inside of you. And is there a way for you to support that as well?
I love that. You've brought up that, there's information that you find online, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, like all of the places. There is so much conflicting information around endometriosis. What advice would you give people to navigate in the online space?
Yeah, this is a most difficult question because there is information overload and you already feel like loss of where to start. And now you see there's like, it's not a fork in the road of like 2 to 3 options. There's like a million paths you can go down. And it's like, what's the path of least resistance for you? Like, is there someone where you connect with, and you want to like give yourself some chances to make small changes? I would say that's where you want to start is pick one path, make some small changes. The path of least resistance is always the best. And listen to your body. You already have that intuition, but too often in this journey of chronic illness, we keep giving our power away. We keep giving our power away. But I'm like, a lot of the answers are within you. I can't tell you how many times when we're working with clients, I'm like, if I sit down with you for 5 minutes, you've given me half the answers yourself. You have the clues, you have the knowledge and the wisdom, but we have to trust ourselves. And then, yes, there's some science on nutrition and supplementation, potentially surgery or other aspects that, experts can guide you with. But also learn to trust yourself in this journey. And so intuitively, if you connect with, hey, I'm going to try this path, this seems easy. Like it might be, hey, I'm going to go AIP for a while and I'm going to try that out. If that suits you, try it out. You might feel like, hey, I do feel better. And then you can go further and explore. But you can't try all of it at once. That's what I say. There's no all at once approach. Even with our clients, our approach, first of all, you can't work with us less than 4 months because we won't see the results. And we know that. And the second thing is we don't make one change more than once. We actually don't even talk about nutrition until 3 weeks into nervous system stabilization.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation. This has been super helpful, I know, for many women getting to navigate through all the online noise and just get into what is actually working for women with endometriosis. So I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I love what you're doing. And, I know that millions of women are listening to your voice. And now with that endometriosis journey, and that lived experience, it's an even deeper connection that women make. It is really woman to woman that we find trust. And when we see ourselves in some other women, that we feel inspired and feel even more motivated to go after our own health.
So well said. Thank you so much for joining the conversation. If you could like, subscribe, or leave a review, it helps me so much in getting this information out to everyone who needs it. If you enjoyed this conversation, then I definitely want you to check out this.